right, everyone, welcome back to the land of Chem. I am your host and the author. My name is Jeffrey Drum. Thank you all so much for joining me again. All right, I hope you all are enjoying the new intro format and this new camera setup so that you can see my face live in high definition. Now, whether or not that is a good thing, I will leave that up to you to decide. But nonetheless, this is episode 22, Story Time, here on the land of Chem. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing explosions, the proverbial Great Flood, and a very paranormal experience that I had during my 2017 expedition to Egypt. But before we get to that, I want to give two quick shout outs. The first going to Alan from the Sacred Geometry Decoded YouTube channel. So Alan was actually one of the first people to hear all of my material in its entirety during approximately a 4 to 5 hour long presentation and conversation that we had on Zoom about 5 years ago. And he and I have become good friends since then. So Alan, just wanted to say thank you for your continued support. I will leave a link in the video description below so all of you can check out his YouTube channel. He has some fantastic material that discusses the mathematics and geometry that are encoded in all of these ancient structures across the planet. So I highly recommend you checking out the SGD Sacred Geometry Decoded channel here on YouTube. So the second shout out goes to Rickshaw89, a gentleman who commented on my video about the pressure capabilities of the Red Pyramid. And in that comment, he mentioned that if the pressure inside these structures were to build up, it could possibly explode the top off of one of these pyramids. Well, Rickshaw89, thank you so much for that comment because it reminded me to include the material that I'm going to present in today's episode. I think you all are really going to enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So the story begins during my 2017 research expedition to Egypt, and this was my first time visiting the country 5 years ago, and I had been diligently researching the prominent theories which propose that the Great Pyramid of Giza was somehow designed to produce electricity. Well, I was determined to finally see these structures for myself in person, do some on-site research of my own, and evaluate whether or not these theories were accurate. Well, I very quickly began to recognize that there was absolutely nothing about these structures that implied a capability to produce electricity. And I'm being very selective about that word produce. These Egyptian pyramids were not designed to produce electricity. But after exploring several of the sites in Egypt, I slowly began to understand that there was a completely different story to be told about these structures. And this artifact here at Abu Sir is the one that opened my eyes and allowed me to see the Egyptian pyramids through this new perspective, which eventually led to my theory that the Egyptian pyramids were designed to produce chemicals on an industrial scale. So we were exploring the pyramids of Abu Sir. It was sunset. This was my first time in Egypt. I was totally pumped and running around the site like a crazy person, just trying to take it all in. And I happened to stumble across this artifact, which is a carved red quartzite conduit that leads from the main pyramid under the black basalt floor of this adjacent temple, and whatever liquid was flowing through this red quartzite conduit flowed through this conduit and into this carved collection bowl. Well, you may be asking yourself the exact same question which immediately popped in my head the first time I saw this thing, which is collection for what? Again, if this is a pharaonic burial and a temple for the interment thereof, what exactly was being produced, flowing through this conduit and being collected in this bowl? This artifact is not compatible with the theory that the Egyptian pyramids are designed to produce a pharaonic burial, nor is it compatible with the theory that these structures are somehow related to the production of electricity. So what exactly were they collecting at these pyramids? Well, at this point, my juices were flowing and my mind was racing. So the following day, we began our expedition to the pyramids of Dashur, and this is a picture from 2017 of Yusuf taking me inside of the Red Pyramid for my first time. And of course, pondering internal chambers, I was completely overwhelmed by the intense smell of ammonia, perplexed by the unusual chemical staining cover the walls of the chambers. I began evaluating the configuration of the internal chambers and trying to determine exactly how this structure functioned. And I didn't realize it at that point, but I was slowly putting together the pieces that would eventually become my theory that the Egyptian pyramids were designed to produce chemicals on an industrial scale. And at this point, the theory is brand new. Again, I had just come up with the idea. We had this unbelievable experience at Abu Sir, and I saw that red quartzite collection bowl. Again, collection for what? We go inside the red pyramid of Dashur. The configuration of the chamber was implying a function. Of course, it smells like ammonia in the final synthesis chamber. And we head back to the hotel that evening, but little did I know what was waiting for us when we returned to the hotel. So we returned to the hotel that evening, and this is a picture of Le Méridien Hotel where we were staying during my 2017 research expedition, and I just wanted to show you this so you can visualize the scenario as I tell the story. So we were crossing through the lobby of the hotel, and I had to stop by the front desk for whatever reason that night. I think I was getting a new key made. So I'm talking to the guy at the front desk, getting the key cut, and all of a sudden I hear a very distinct southern accent behind me. So I currently live in the southeastern United States, and the accents in this region are very, very distinct. So I immediately recognized that it was from the same state that I live in. So this guy already had my attention before I ever turned around. So I turn around and I do a quick visual inspection of the gentleman standing behind me, and he was there alone, which is already a little bit unusual for tourists to Egypt. Most people are traveling with friends or groups or whatever, but this guy was there alone with his guide. And of course, I introduced myself. He introduced himself, and he told me that his name was Trip, and he was employed by the TSA, was stationed in France, and had some vacation time. And instead of taking that vacation time, returning home to the United States to see his family, he instead decided to come to Egypt so that he could see the Egyptian pyramids for his first time as well. So already, I was a little bit skeptical of this story because we later found out that he has a wife and kids at home in the US. So instead of going to see them, he decides to come to Egypt. Okay, dude, I'm with you. Let's keep going. So anyway, we start talking to this guy, and he actually tells me that he's from the exact same city that I live in. And again, I'm super, super skeptical of this being an actual individual. And I do a quick visual inspection as we're talking to this guy, and he looks like a normal enough guy, about my age, mid-30s, relatively, normal looking guy until I look him in the eye. And I knew there was something unusual and different about this individual. He had very, very pronounced, somewhat googly eyes, which to this day remind me of a chameleon's eyes, which kind of operate independently on each side. So I was a little bit caught off guard by the appearance of this individual, but he appeared, usual enough. But this guy definitely had my attention. So I wanted to talk to him more. So I invited him to join my friend and I for dinner that evening by the pool. So my friend and I go up to the hotel room. We start getting ready for dinner, come back down and order this immense feast in anticipation of Trip coming down to eat with us. So he eventually makes it down to the table, but he doesn't want to eat for whatever reason. We're offering him all this amazing food. He's like, no, I'm fine. But we start talking about our experiences in Egypt, what I had seen over the previous couple of days, and I'm sort of just testing the waters, presenting my theories, originally about the pyramids being designed to produce electricity, and I was beginning to develop my own ideas that these structures were designed to produce chemicals. Now, keep in mind, this theory is brand new. I mean, I have been thinking about this for more, maybe a couple of hours at this point when we had gotten back to the hotel. I had discussed this with absolutely no one except for my friend that was with me at the time, and she and I were sitting at dinner, again, kind of looking back and forth at each other, trying to evaluate the person that was sitting in front of us. And we were both very skeptical of this individual. So I gradually start to present my ideas, told him about the collection bowl at Abu Sir and how I thought it was for collecting chemicals that were being produced in the pyramid. I told him about my experience inside of the Red Pyramid, the smell of ammonia. I knew a little bit about the production of ammonia, that it requires increased temperature and pressure, and ammonia can be used for fertilizer and all these kind of ideas. So I'm presenting these ideas to this guy, quote unquote, Trip. And he's looking at me so matter-of-factly, just kind of nodding his head as I go along with my presentation. And at the end of it, he looks at me square in the face and says, of course that's what they were for. He already knew what I was talking about before I had ever presented it. It was absolutely no shock to him. It wasn't surprising. He didn't shrug. He didn't have any questions. It was so matter of fact. He already knew what I was going to say before I even said it. We were, again, as I tell this story, the hair is kind of standing up on the back of my neck and my arms because it was a really creepy paranormal experience that I still don't have a great explanation for this day. Because again, this guy gave me his contact information. Oh, hit me up on Hangouts. We're going to talk and keep in touch after this. He completely disappeared off the face of the planet after that night. So during this conversation, we're also talking about the storage boxes, the containers in the underground Serapeum of Saqqara. And I'm proposing some different theories. And this guy looks at me again dead in the eyes and says, storage for waste materials. And again, I'm looking back at my friend. She's looking at me like, what the fuck is this? Who is this guy? How does he already know about this? Why is he not surprised or shocked at these ideas? And he's proposing functions for these things that had not even crossed my mind. So after this very unusual encounter with this individual quote unquote trip, so what's the probability that someone from my state is in Egypt at the same time as me? Okay, fairly low probability. What is the probability that someone from my city is in Egypt at the same time as me? Okay, even lower probability than the first one. What is the probability that someone from my state, someone from my city, happens to be in the hotel lobby in the exact same time, the 3-minute window that I was up there getting that key cut? What is the probability that I run into that individual in that hotel lobby? It is almost zero, and I do not believe in coincidence. This encounter was preordained. And after my conversation with this guy, I knew that I was on the right track, and I was determined to pursue this to the very end. And that takes us to our next destination, which is Luxor. So after an unbelievably amazing experience exploring the pyramids of Lower Egypt, my friend and I took a flight and we flew to Luxor so that we could explore the temples of Luxor, Karnak Temple and Luxor Temple. And it was incredible. I highly recommend that you guys also take that trip to go down there. It's completely worth it. So we arrived at our hotel the first night. And it's a hotel called El Mercure, and one of the premier hotels in Luxor. This is looking from the hotel gardens at the Nile River. Across the river is, of course, the Valley of the Kings, where all of the pharaonic burials are located. So this is our first night in the hotel. We're hanging out on the hotel grounds, having this really strange conversation about the paranormal experience that we had at Le Meridian with this guy, quote unquote, Trip. And how did he already know about this theory that I haven't even fully developed yet? And he knew things that I didn't even know. And how did we happen to run into this guy from the same city in the hotel lobby? And it's again, very, very unusual paranormal experience that still gives me chills to this day. And we're walking around the hotel grounds having this crazy conversation. And we finally make our way to the dining room of the hotel. And I immediately notice this unbelievable mural covering the walls of the dining room. And on each wall of the dining room, there's a different scene depicted that had different representations of these unusual women. So each one of the walls, there was a different scene and there was a different type of woman. So this is the scene on one of the first walls. So I'm walking around the dining room, looking from wall to wall at each one of the depictions. And I'm looking at these in detail and studying the paintings on the wall. And I already knew that this was a very unusual mural. So we're staying at the Mercure. However, this is owned by a corporate Marriott, and you don't see these type of very esoteric type paintings in a Marriott. It's just not something that a corporate structure is going to approve. So this mural already had my attention, and I knew there was something unusual and special about these images, but I didn't realize quite what it was yet. So I'm looking from wall to wall and looking at these depictions of these different women. Again, this one here is kind of a tigress type woman. This next one here appears to be a red-headed woman that has wings. So then I get to this wall, and I'm studying this unbelievably captivating image of this beautiful Egyptian woman in this incredible scene, and I start to notice that her skin is green. So another very unusual detail in this mural. So again, this thing definitely has my attention. My mind is racing. All of these unusual experiences that we've had during the past week. Everything about touring Egypt is like a dream. It is an unbelievably surreal experience. And I'm studying the mural, going from wall to wall, and then I walk over into the corner of the dining room, right behind the little maitre d' counter where they bring people into the dining room. And there's a little tiny corner of this mural with this. And I'm going to give you guys a few moments so that you can wrap your head around this image before I begin to explain exactly what this contains. So it's very, very clearly a depiction of a pyramid. And you can see here that it is a red pyramid. So again, this thing already has my attention. And you guys, I'm sure, have already noticed, what do we see here in front of the pyramid? It's a flood. And the pyramids are submerged in this flood. What do we see here? It's a boat full of animals. Well, I don't think I need to go into any further explanation as to the story thereof, but this is a depiction of the Great Flood. So again, the artist that created this mural is implying that the Egyptian pyramids existed prior to the proverbial Great Flood. So again, a very, very unusual mural to be found in a corporate Marriott hotel. And again, of course, this is just an artist depiction, but again, this had to go through an approval chain in the corporate hierarchy of Marriott, and they approved this mural to be painted on the wall, which is very, very contradictory to the conventional story told throughout Egypt. However, the most important detail about this structure is the pyramid itself. And the reason I wanted to mention this, again, shout out to Rickshaw89 for reminding me about this in his comment about the top of the pyramid exploding due to the pressure inside. So I'm studying this image and I'm looking at the red pyramid, and I thought originally that these were clouds floating in front of the pyramid. However, after a moment of studying, I followed the edge of the pyramid here, and I noticed that the top of the pyramid is tilting over to the side. And I realized at that moment what I was looking at. This is a depiction of a pyramid that is exploding from the inside. The top of the pyramid is being blown off of the structure. Again, you can see here that the top is not aligned with the edge of the pyramid. The top is actually coming off. These are bricks that are being blown off of the structure, and this is steam or gas, vapor, whatever you want to call it, that is escaping from inside of the pyramid. So again, I'm already developing the theory that the Egyptian pyramids were designed to produce chemicals. We have this crazy experience with Tripp at the hotel, who already knew what I was thinking before I even said it. We get to the hotel here in Luxor, and there is this fantastic, surreal depiction of the Red Pyramid partially submerged in the proverbial Great Flood and exploding from the inside, the pressure having built up inside of this structure so significantly that it blew the top off of the pyramid and all of the gases from inside were escaping. And it took me quite some time to evaluate this, but after looking at it for probably 45 minutes, I finally realized exactly what I was seeing. So I wanted to share this story with you because, again, everything about going to Egypt is incredibly surreal, and you have to pay attention to the small details. So everything about that 2017 expedition to Egypt was incredibly surreal and dreamlike. I still look back at it 5 years later, questioning whether or not it actually happened, but the photos are proof that I was physically there. And when I returned home from Egypt after our 2-week trip, I hit the ground running and I began researching everything that I could possibly learn about the production of chemicals on an industrial scale as related to the Egyptian pyramids. And 5 years later, here we are today. And just a quick reminder that limited first edition print copies of the Land of Chem book are now available at www.thelandofchem.com. This is an absolutely beautiful first edition print copy of the book, and I am so proud of how this thing turned out. And if you'd like to help to support the channel, just go to the website, pick up a copy of the book. All the orders mean the world to me. So thank you all so much in advance. All right, everyone, that is it for today's episode. This was episode 22, Story Time, here on the Land of Chem. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. In the next episode, we are going to depart from Egypt and return home to Ireland so that we can apply the knowledge that was gained through the degrees of the Egyptian pyramids to interpreting the long-lost function of the ancient passage chamber structures of Ireland, such as Newgrange. I've been really excited to finally make this video, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, so stay tuned. To all the new subscribers, thank you so much. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Land of Chem here on YouTube. Like the video, leave it a comment. I really enjoy interacting with everybody in the comments and hearing your feedback. Again, the website, www.thelandofchem.com. Follow me on Instagram, @thelandofchem. I think that is it for today's video, so I will see you next time.